like Nigel has already indicated, we decided we needed to elaborate, as, if you like, as an appendix to the 2008 guidelines. How do we do this? And we produced this handbook. You can see it on the IUCN. We have only got a couple of 3 copies with us, but you can see it on the IUCNW National Committee for the UK website as a PDF, so you can get a hold of it there. Whilst it's in covers, I would say it's work in progress. I would fully expect us, by the time we finish this project, to want to revise that and then put it into the wider programme which Peter, Sue and Nigel are leading. But at the moment it's there to try and help the process. We're just doing the front end at the moment. I think that's what I would call it. The 2-step test. Firstly, are all of these sites and areas, whatever their status, do they fit the IUCN protected area definition? And then if they do, what category would they be in and what would be their governance type? And the bubbles in yellow reflect the sections in this handbook to guide people through the system. So it's a very simple, the first 2 steps in the diagram that Nigel talked about. However, it wasn't quite as simple as that. Given our experience of rubbish in, rubbish out, we decided that we needed a more expert system, and we needed some way of interposing those experts from WCPA. Because in the past the system had been, as it's described on the left-hand side of the diagram, it goes through a governmental system, basically through what's the JNCC, which is the Joint Nature Conservation Committee for the United Kingdom, into the European Environment Agency, and then into the UN database. With a slightly separate route for international sites. We said, to hell with this, there's no point in us getting involved in this process unless we can have an expert, independent, critical, no-holds-barred review. And we decided to set up, I can't remember what we initially called it, it was a rather provocative phrase which caused some large ripples in the UK Environment Ministry and in the Joint Nature Conservation Committee. But we decided to stand our ground because we thought if we are going to improve standards, which is what this is all about, it's not just about data, it's improving standards, we need to have a way of objectively testing those standards. If we're going to eventually get to the end point, not of what category these are, or whether they're protected areas, but actually, are they being managed properly? And this is part of a process for that. So that line going through the centre there, the review by the IUCN WCPA assessment panel, in a true WCPA democratic basis, we are self-appointed at the moment. But given that we have Sue, Nigel, Adrian and myself who've been around the category system for a long time, we have invited other people in. But I think it is an interesting question for the future. Who are the experts in our network? Not just in one country, i.e. the UK, but across our regions. And I think there's a real role for regional vice chairs to set up systems of accreditation of the expert assessors and evaluators, verifiers and certifiers, if we're going to make this a robust, internationally valid and valuable system in the future. So what have we done in the UK to try and move this forward? Very simply, therefore, we've developed the handbook with a 2-step process. As I said earlier, we will review that in the light of experience, in the light of things from our partners. We've established the assessment panel, though we haven't had our first assessments yet, but they'll be coming soon. We've also decided that the agencies in government and the leading organisations on particular groups of protected areas need to provide what we call a statement of compliance, which is an assessment against the IUCN definition of a protected area. So, for instance, for our national parks, the systems in England, Wales and Scotland, it has to address each of the elements of the definition. And we will then review that. And we've equally done that for the 2 types of EU Natura sites, etc., etc. We're going through that process at the moment, and we're going to do it rigorously. It's quite arduous, but unless we can really nail whether these are protected areas, we devalue the currency, whereas our whole approach here is to increase the value of the currency. But we have, rather than this being a sort of independent process of government, we've invited the ownership bodies, particularly the national trusts, RSPB, the wildlife trusts, for example, who are very substantial NGO, charitable, often other IUCN owners to participate in the approach. And if you go into the IUCN UK website, you will find all about that. We're still in the process. It will be interesting to hear from others how you feel about this, and we're still wanting to learn. Quickly now, an example of WCPA involvement in Austria. We were invited in basically by the head of the nature section of the Austrian Federal Ministry because they wanted to have an independent verification, because they were prepared to release resources to national parks providing they satisfied Category 2. And obviously the national park bodies, which are run at the state level, were interested as well. We particularly focused on the 3 parts of the Hohe Tauern National Park, because the parks are actually run by the provincial governments. And the main challenges there were actually quite fundamental. Hunting in the core areas, the extent of infrastructure, particularly built infrastructure, car parks, retail establishments, prior to the designation of the park, and how they were handling zoning within the park, particularly to ensure the integrity of the core areas. So I would say it took 20 years before we could possibly go and look at whether we could do an assessment, because it took 20 years to solve some of the hunting issues, for example, through very difficult negotiations. How did we do it? We developed our own protocol, working with the federal ministry and the provincial governments. We assigned experts who made a visit and reported on the category assignment, but significantly also on the issues to be addressed. It was a point that was made earlier in the discussion. This is not clear cut. The report would then come to the regional vice chair and the head of the protected areas programme for a review. If we felt that the recommendation for the categorisation, with whatever caveats there were, was sustainable, then we would make a recommendation for the chair for a certificate. And here's a picture of Peter Rupisch, who's one of the WCPA member who heads the Hohe Tauern Carinthian section. What do we learn from that? Well, the federal ministry provides additional resources, protected area body gets recognition, data's on the database. What is significant is the Austrians are now thinking, and I heard at lunchtime from the person from the ministry, of enshrining IUCN as evaluators in their system for redoing all of these, because they're very worried that the standards don't exist. And I think there's that lovely reassessment thing, because this is not a once and for all. We've got to keep this going if we're going to achieve the ultimate objective of improving standards, which is what the game is all about after all. Thank you very much.
can I get you to come up and present while I introduce you? We will have a chance for questions. We're going to have a panel after the tea break, which will pick up on anything you've heard here and other issues. Hagyang Hyo is, he didn't tell me anything about himself, but fortunately I know about him. He is a research fellow with IUCN in the regional office in Bangkok for Asia. He is also a secondee from the Korean National Parks and Wildlife Service and is challenging my own record as the world's longest government secondment to IUCN. He's with IUCN for a long while. He's been a lot of experience in the work going on here in Korea on management effectiveness, evaluation and the category assignment process. So, thanks.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks for your kind introduction. So, let me introduce Korea case studies focusing on the Korea National Park Services activities on the IUCN category reassignment. This is whole protected area in Korea. So 1,401 protected areas in Korea. So lots of various kind of protected areas in Korea, and so almost 16% of total territory is protected, and 6% of total sea, territorial sea is covered with protected areas. It's a different system. And national parks in Korea, there are 20 national parks in Korea, so it's almost 1/3 of protected areas is national parks. So mountain national parks is 16, and coastal and marine is 3, and historic national parks 1. So visitors is more than 40 million per year, so there's lots of visitors in Korea National Park Service. So I would like to introduce the background of the category assignment. So actually internationally, the CBD COP7 recommended to implementing the IUCN category system into national protected area system. So that is in 2004 nationally. So we have 20 national parks, but this is national park is internationally is category 5. It's protected landscape protected areas. So many experts and parliamentary inspection recommended they suggest a simple message. Why don't we our national park is not an international national park? They asked us to why. What's the reason? And CBD recommend to implement the IUCN PA category system, but why don't KMS don't implement the international system? And one more thing is OECD Environmental Performance Report. This is published in 2006. I'm not sure the exactly what, but they mentioned the Korea's conserved system is a little bit less conserved because most of protected areas is categorized category 4 or 5. So only one national park is categorized category 2. As they mentioned something like that. So this is a kind of pressure from outside. From inside motivation also, there are some inside motivations. So from time goes by, there is some changes on the definition and objective of national parks. So National Parks Act is established in 1967. At that time, objective is to protect natural scenery, scenic beauty. So definition is also the same. But 1980 to promote appropriate use, and 1995. At that time, we firstly used the ecosystem. So to protect the natural ecosystem and scenery. So also we got the scenery. But 2001, the terminology is changed to preserve the natural ecosystem, nature, and cultural scenery, etc. And definitions is changed. So internally, our target and aims is changed to protect the national park. So along to the outside pressure and inside needs, so we try to reassign our categories. So firstly, we network with IUCN WCK. We don't know well about the IUCN category system, so we ask them, we ask for advice, and we do WCMC. And so we need some internal understanding of the Paris IUCN category system, so we try to study the 3 years or 3 years of Paris IUCN category and how to implement it, etc. And according to the guideline, we make some informations step by step and field survey and verification. I will introduce internal research. So this process is understanding process internal within the organization. So first year we how to effectively implement our category system into Korea protected system and the national park. And next year, so how to manage national parks in accordance with assigned categories. And third year, so we think this marine and territorial national parks is really important. So how to implement that category in marine and coastal systems. Under this study result, so we made a decision we need some kind of support from the expert, the member of WCK. So we carried out the field missions, field evaluation, this kind of verification process. This process cooperates with IUCN ARO and WCK expert. So we developed a field evaluation methodology based on the IUCN guideline in 2008 and previous case studies, including UK case studies. And we conducted the field missions in 2009, 10, and 11 years. And during this time, we translated Korean version, we made a Korean version of new guidelines. This slide shows the result. Totally, 15 Korean national parks have been recategorized from Category 5 to Category 2. And then we made us, based on the field missions, we made a summarized report, the success report this year, only this year. This made by Sue Stoughton and myself and Peter and me. This presentation is mostly based on this report. So benefits and outcomes. There are lots of benefits using the category system, speaking common language, and some systematic reporting system, things like that. But I would like to highlight raising public awareness in this process. So the verification process, some workshop and public hearing process. That kind of process is public awareness raising process. And we can share the consensus on the management objectives of national parks. I can show you next slide the example. A common system to understand the objectives of management and prioritize budget allocation for conservation. So the Category 2 national parks is more priority on the conservation. So it's also influence to the budget allocation. A logical monitoring of Korea's management of its protected systems through adopting international accepted system and standards. A process of adaptive management allowing for management objectives to be achieved. I think the verification process is only for assigning the category. So most of the person say to the question mark, is it needed or not? So this process, verification process, can provide some recommendation how to manage the accordance in the IUCN category. That's a good process for the adaptive management. This is case. There are, in 2008, there are some arguments on the establishment of KPI national parks. Or 5 national parks wanted to. Local government wanted to, usually wanted to make development. So they wanted to, and local community wanted to set him up KPI. But somebody insists against this movement. So when they against the setting up cable car, they usually say this national park is category 2. So only this year, the National Parks Committee decided to didn't agree with the setting up cable car. And next actions suggest next steps. So try to implement categories of all category systems. And we try to improve the category system in National Parks Act and develop further guidance on management category 2. So in category 2, develop management plans which more strongly reflect category assignment system. Use the experience of Korea to contribute to global and domestic guidance on category assignment at the national level. That's the next step for Korea National Park Service. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Yoon, for that